This is the
Welcome.
Town Budget Workshop of May 7th, 2012. This is our first workshop to discuss the warrant, which was released, this is Monday. This warrant was released to us last Friday, end of business day. So we're getting a first look at it and a first discussion of it. So here we go. Okay, just pick up the thread where we were starting to talk there.
Do you want to begin with the money articles, Paul, which would be Article 6 would be the first money article?
We can. I want to begin by saying that last year I made an attempt, because we had a little bit more time to work with this, I made an attempt to specifically name individual articles that might be of general interest, and when we were going to be discussing those, but we are in very tight constraints this year for discussing any of these, so I'm going to throw all of that out the window. We'll just discuss these as fast as we can, and try to dispose of them as fast as we can, while dealing with them in whatever amount of time each one of them needs. So bottom line is, we're going to have a few workshops, but I'm going to make no attempt to name hot buttons that might be discussed at any given workshop. All right, so Andy, you want to start with the, say, Article 18, I gather?
Yeah, if that's what the committee would like to do, start with the first
Sounds
money
fine.
article.
Okay, just looking at the broad view here, Article 18 encompasses general government, and that is increased by 1.2% from last year. Okay, so, yeah, we got that. Okay, so,
I may be working off a different copy, Paul, I'm sorry.
you might well be, is the one you have
Article 6.
from this morning?
Article 6 is the first money article.
Right. Article 6, oh, excuse me. Yes, indeed it is. Kind of blew off that whole thing. Okay, Article 6, new exterior.
The first question I'm going to ask about this is,
Okay, let me just...
why are we worrying about the exterior of the town hall? We haven't done anything about fixing the exterior for the old fire station. It's been, what, 5, 6 years? All that.
You know, when I looked at this, and this article is, I don't know if we should read this or not so that people understand what it is, but it's appropriating a sum of money not to exceed $120,000 for the purpose of funding a new exterior covering for the town hall building. And am I under the correct impression, Paul, that this is something that we would be borrowing money to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Very similar to the reassessment that was done 2 years ago. We're on the third year of that, of the repayment. This would be another 5-year bond.
Now, when
And I
I
believe that the $120,000 it's talking about here, talking about the total town indebtedness, I believe that the current bonds outstanding unpaid in item 1A, I believe that is what's remaining on the reassessment bond that, from 2 years ago.
Now, when I looked at this, and I've looked at other portions of this warrant, I find it important that the town look at some items that would maybe spark the need for a capital improvement committee to reform and become active.
Yep.
Because I'm looking at this list that I came up with today, and I just want to read it real quick. The first one is what Percy just mentioned, and it's the siding on the old fire department. The funds were approved to do this project at one time. It went out to bid. It's not done. Town hall siding, we know that this has been a concern for a number of years, but I do not feel that it is responsible to the taxpayers to do this all in one
Can you
chunk.
see if that's Ted right now, so we can not have to repeat anything?
I don't think that it's fair to the taxpayer to do this all in one chunk or to borrow the money. I think it would be more proactive to start putting money into a capital fund
Yes.
for the reserve, for that purpose. The replacement of the fire truck, that's what we've done this year. I believe in the article, they're asking for an additional $25,000 for that, because their fire truck needs to be replaced as soon as possible. The salt shed, we've known for a number of years that the condition of the structure's failing, and that hasn't been looked at. That's another area that we need to start setting some money aside, so we're not in the same scenario as the scenario that we're dealing with the town hall. The other thing is the capital road improvement projects. I question the road surfacing, because it seems like we award our surfacing bids to contractors, and we don't seem to be a priority to the bids that, when they're awarded. We always seem to be on the bottom of the list, or we're late in the season and then we don't get them. And I'm wondering if we're gonna get surfacing before June 30th this year. Because it had been discussed before that the contractor that was awarded the bid was gonna honor that price that we walked in at last year. And I don't know if that's gonna happen. But I think that these five projects, 5 things, is something that, you know, as I look at the long-term needs and look at, you know, some of the stuff that's on the warrant this year, I think that it would be a much more proactive and a much more responsible approach to the taxpayer to start putting some money into some capital improvement account somewhere along the line, so that we don't get hit with having to borrow money to accomplish these repairs.
And the second item, I don't remember there being funds approved, but that may be my faulty
And I
memory.
might not be correct on that, but I thought at one time that they had put that out for, they had advertised that they were seeking bids.
I think that they may have sought bids, but did not
There was,
go through with it.
there was went out to bid, I think, to paint, if I remember right, this was quite a few years ago, to paint the town hall.
Yeah.
And I believe they got into something over there, and it wasn't very good at all, pretty well rotted out.
But just looking at that first money article, Article 6, that's a big chunk of money, and having to borrow the money, I don't know if I'm necessarily for doing that. I think that you start a reserve, a capital improvement fund, and you either attack it as you break that project up into smaller, you know, do a part of the project one year, part of it the next year, do it that way, or establish a capital improvement fund for that project, and then once you've got some monies established, then move forward with the project. You know, especially in a year where, you know, we know that we have got the potential of having to replace the fire truck ahead of schedule.
Well, there's some big money
Yes.
objects here.
And, you know, I think that the town's done extraordinarily well at holding the line as far as not increasing taxes, but you can only hold that line so long before some of these things, like that's, you know, listed here, are gonna catch up with you, and it becomes a major expense where you either have to, keep deferring them, or you have to borrow money in order to accomplish them.
Well, the salt shed is certainly, you know,
The salt shed.
liability for that thing that kind of concerns me.
The salt shed should have been looked at a long time ago, and we should have, you know, started a capital fund for that building.
Do you have an extra copy of this, Andy?
Yes, and there should be money there, but you can look at any of the stuff, and
How
it all
much?
falls under the same category.
How much money is there right now in the fire truck account?
There's 100,000 and we're asking for 75,000 this year.
So that's not gonna get us a new fire truck anyway.
How much is it again?
We have 100,000 because we saved 50,000 for the last 2 years. Okay. And then we're asking, we bumped it up instead of asking 50,000 this year, we asked 75 because the fire truck died. And then we got another one from Danvers. They gave it to us. But we brought it up here and we had it inspected. It was gonna cost 11 grand just to make it roadworthy, never mind the pumps and all the other parts of the fire truck. So what we're doing is we're scrapping it instead. I haven't talked to Pete, he was gonna call back Danvers and say we're gonna scrap it, and if they wanted it back to scrap, then we'd have to bring it back to them. But it wasn't worth fixing. They are looking at other options right now to get us through for a little while longer. Trying to borrow from Milton, because they have an extra one, and what we would do is take on their insurance, which will allow us a few more years. The other thing that they're looking at is leasing what do they call it, a model truck, they take it around, show it to different towns.
Demo?
Leasing a demo, or leasing a new truck. The problem is it's gonna take at least a year to order, and they haven't even started writing specs, because they planned on this other truck lasting a couple more years. So the fire department has started a committee, they're working into it. If we're gonna need to do anything with the fire truck, this year, then we'll have to go back to a town meeting. So on your other item, you were talking about when they came in, putting up for $120,000 for the siding and $100,000 for the windows. I'm against this, and it's gonna be a 2-to-1 as far as this article even being on here. I am all for, what I had recommended is we have a reserve, or SS, of about between $12,000 to $15,000 from this year's building fund, and then our budget is 25, we had put in 20, but we bumped that up to 25 since we met with you. So that would give us almost 40,000. To vinyl side, the building is 80,000. The 120,000 figure is to put on cedar siding, which then would also require painting every 4 years. Vinyl siding, 80,000 for the whole building. We can do one section each year with windows. 4 years, the whole building's done, and we got 20 years. That's my recommendation. That's what I'm gonna make all the way through this process. Bill and Larissa had decided that they want to put it forward to the town. Do you want to borrow this money? But to borrow more money now, with not knowing what's gonna happen with the fire truck. And that's why we didn't put any money in for anything else, because the fire truck just died. I mean, it died in a fire a month ago. And we had planned on that running for at least 3 more years until we had $350,000 to buy a new one. So the fire department's working on it, but I agree, we should not be borrowing any more money at this time. We just paid down our loan on the reeval. We had $48,000 over what was estimated for the reval, and we had to keep it in the bank account until the reval was done, because we didn't know what costs were gonna come up. Reval is completely closed, nobody else can come back and look for abatements based on the reval, so we paid an additional $48,000 on our loan last Friday. That's why we don't have a permanent number as far as whatever our indebtedness is now, and we'll be making one more payment before town meeting. So that will actually go, what you have for figuring in there?
120 right now. Says total bonds outstanding and unpaid 120.
Okay, and that's as of last Friday, because we
Yeah,
just paid $48,000 plus our monthly payment. So, as of last week, it was like 160, 170,000. But we were told it was gonna cost $260,000 to do the reval. We took a bid of $212,000, and then there was some additional costs, so we were left with $48,000 that we just gave back to the bank. So we're a year ahead on the loan, so we paid the loan a year off.
I know that when the town has acquired property for non-payment of taxes,
Right.
that they have sold it and then put the funds into a capital improvement account, is
Right.
that?
Yeah, and we
Is there
sold,
anything,
we sold the trailer on Loop Road for $10,000 last year, and then we had to pay the taxes, so we've got $7,000 in that account from that Loop Road property.
Wasn't there money in there from the property on the Flat Ground Road?
Oh, they might be.
Yeah.
That's the only other that's gone
Yeah.
in since I've been there, I haven't checked the account.
There are other funds as well.
Yeah,
And I
so-
believe from a piece down on 13th Street that was sold.
Oh, yeah, that lot that we tried to sell 3 years in a row, is that the one with the pad on it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so there should be some other, those funds should be in that account also.
Yeah, I don't
But
think there's a
believe we have
lot,
to go to
maybe.
the town to ask them to spend that money, right?
Yeah, I
Ask them
would
to
say
spend on
so,
a
yes,
certain
yes,
project.
yes.
Now, those capital improvement funds, why couldn't some of those funds be used to side the old fire department, the gym? Because that's one of the things, I mean, I hear people talk
Oh,
about.
this bids we got, the 80,000 for the vinyl and 120,000 for the cedar, includes the old fire department, the one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all, the whole building.
Is it
But
broken
we also
out?
discovered we need a new roof on that too.
But I mean, what I'm getting at is, let's say that the voters do not want to go with roughly $200,000 worth of improvements to the town hall, but many people would like to see the old fire department, which is one of the first things that you see when you come around the corner.
Well, if you look at Article 8, the event that Article 6 or 7 failed, to see if the town will vote to carry forward the building maintenance fund balance and allow the balance carried forward to be appropriated for the purpose of exterior repairs and reconditioning of the town hall. So what we've done, if we don't vote to put that money forward, it just goes back into the general fund. And it's between $12,000 and $14,000 that we have left from this year, plus the 25 we're getting next year. So there's two sides. And we plan on including fixing that too.
Why can't that be put into a
Yeah, I think
capital improvement project?
and
money.
Well, we
former
gotta see if
fire
we wanna fix the
department.
town hall first. I mean, sure, the fire department needs, the fire building needs a new roof, it needs new siding. The siding will be a lot more expensive to do that right now because of the way it was closed in, according to the contractors that came up and bid. You're not talking about like taking, say, $20,000 and getting the whole front of the building, including the library, 1 year. Windows, all the siding, everything done. You're talking about probably $40,000 or $50,000 for that building because it needs a new roof, it needs to be insulated, it has to have some leaks fixed, I guess there's some cracks. You can't just go side it and make it look pretty. There's a lot more to that one. So, this is, you know, this has been going on for 10 years from what I'm understanding from talking to past selectmen that have come in and talked to us and everything else.
Yeah.
Everybody gets to discuss it, and then as soon as it gets out on the floor, it's, well, why don't we do it this way? Why don't we do it that way? And nobody does anything. The building maintenance fund is to do this kind of stuff, and it has not been used that way over the years. So that's what my proposal is this year.
This is exactly what you just said.
And not to ask for more money to do that, because we know, we may be coming to you in November and saying, okay, we need to borrow $200,000 to make up the difference between what we've got for the fire truck and buy a brand new fire truck. And I guarantee the town will want to buy a fire truck a lot more than they want to put vinyl siding on these buildings, or cedar siding, whatever they want to do.
Other than the roof that you mentioned out there, is any of this a maintenance issue, as in you better maintain it or you'll lose it? You know, water infiltration, settling, anything like that, or is it just
None of this-
appearance?
Yeah,
It's
none
all
of this is
aesthetic.
structural or safety or anything else. It's just how it looks. It just has not been taken care of and it looks terrible. If we don't do it soon, it's gonna get that way. You know, because you got all the paint peeling off and the roof, if that roof leaks, we're gonna lose that building, and they spend all that money fixing the inside and having the gym equipment and everything else. So it is gonna come to that if we don't take care of it soon.
Well, it would appear that Article 8 is very close to the alternate suggestion that Andy made about,
Except for we're not asking the town to tell us to do the fire department, or do the front side, or do the left side. We want a contractor to come in and tell us what's the most important thing, what's the worst, what needs to be done first. We don't want the town to say, well, I think the front of the fire department will look better than the front of the town.
well, I mean, it's written very generally, so
Yeah,
that's...
so it goes into the maintenance budget, and then the maintenance is decided by the selectmen. And that's if they vote to not borrow $220,000. Now, the second $100,000 for the windows just came up last week. Tom Gore came in and said that the windows all need to be fixed. And pointed out some things, and yeah, they do. And so that's why if we do it 1 year at a time, whoever we hire to do that section also has to repair the windows at the same time. And it's not, we don't have to replace them. It's just like the sills need to be fixed because they didn't have proper drainage, or they put vinyl pieces across that trap the water so the water would come down the window and then stay there and rot the sills and stuff like that. If they're gonna do siding, then we can have that kind of stuff fixed at the same time.
But I agree with you, Ted, that knowing that the fire truck may become an issue,
Oh, it is an issue.
And-
What we're gonna do with it is, well, we gotta wait and
but
find out.
what I'm saying is knowing that we may end up having to have a special town meeting at some point after June.
Yeah.
The replacement of the fire truck is something that the fire department has done responsibly and has had money placed into a capital account for the last few years, knowing that this was going to happen.
And bought a truck at a reduced price, thinking that it was gonna last them until they had the...
They did it was a very responsible move for them to do that in order to get us through. I don't agree with borrowing money for these capital improvements to the town hall, I'd rather see a proactive approach like what the fire department did with their truck and start earmarking some money for the capital improvements, even though now we've deferred it and it's kind of a reactive way to do things. But I think that if you vote in $200,000 now for these improvements, and then we end up having to purchase a new fire truck in the same year, that it's not doing, it's not responsible to the taxpayer.
The other thing that you have to take into account is if you don't get a fire truck that meets certain standards, everybody in town will see an increase in their fire insurance. And you have to take that into account when you talk about allotting money, you know. My personal feeling has been that the town selectmen have taken the wrong approach. They've held back doing things to hold the tax rate down, and it's gonna come back to bite them now. There's no question about it.
Well,
If we start this process of carrying over that money instead of letting it disappear back into the general fund, there's gonna be plenty of money to keep the building up the way it needs to be kept up. Because, you know, just in the past few years, you had the town, this whole side of town hall was done, you had the new floor put down. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be done, but the problem has been, I feel, from the selectmen that have come in there, is everybody thinks it's a good idea at the time, but then something like a fire truck comes up. And then that's where all the focus goes, and that gets left behind. My idea is, let's start doing it a little bit every year, get the building back, and then maintain it. It won't cost us as much. Borrowing $200,000, you're gonna have $40,000 in debt payments each year. Plus, we've got 40-something thousand, I think it's like $46,000 a year we're paying on the rear valve. And if we get $200,000 for a fire truck, it's another $40,000. So we're talking about, you know, $120,000, $130,000 just in payments. We're getting close to what it cost us for the mortgage on the school. You know, and it's not necessary, it really isn't. I mean, if it was my house, and the outside of my house didn't look good, and I thought, you know, I'd really like to decide to make it look good, but I knew my furnace was going, I'm gonna buy my furnace.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's happening here. The outside looks terrible, it's looked terrible for a long time, but our furnace is going, and we gotta get that new fire truck.
Ted, you mentioned that the fire department is looking at a lease program?
They're looking into everything. They're looking into a lease. They're looking into buying a, what was the term again? I don't know why it's not sticking with me.
Demo.
I called Peter today because the Balsams up in New Hampshire, the hotel,
Yeah.
is going out of business. They're having a major auction Saturday, and they've got a beautiful looking fire truck in a picture that's going up for auction. So I called Peter this morning, told him to give him a call and see if we can get it before auction, because they're gonna feel you're gonna get some kind of rich car collector that's gonna go up there and want it in his garage. So he's gonna get in touch with them today and see if we can look at it and make a deal before it goes to auction. But, you know, the Balsams is that town, so they have their own fire department, because they get a ski area and all that stuff. And it's completely gone out of business, so they're selling everything. So he's gonna look at that. So they're looking at a lot of options. They get feelers out, you know, in several states. If they can find a used one like we did from York and get a couple more years out of it for $10,000, we'll do that. In the meantime, they'll come up with all the requirements of the truck that they want to buy, and then start having it built, because it takes a year to get built.
Because Milton, I don't know that part of it, but Milton has gone, on their highway department, has gone to a lease program
Right.
on their trucks.
Yep.
And there was in the warrant, the articles that they had, how many thousands of dollars that was saved.
Yep.
Instead of buying a truck, you know, that's all equipped and with a plow and all that
And
stuff.
then at the end of the lease, you have the option to buy it, or you start a
Yep.
new lease and get a new brand new one,
And
and then you have that payment built into your budget instead of...
the end of 5 years.
Now.
Yeah. I thought that was a good way to go there, you know,
Yeah.
they were saving tons of money.
Yeah, so the fire department has formed a committee, and they're looking into all these options, but we have to keep in mind when we're looking on borrowing $220,000, we don't know what the option is that they're gonna say is the best one for us, so. That's why I'm voting against that article.
Now, as far as the windows go, how bad are they in terms of, I assume that we're paying more for oil than perhaps we would if we had, if we came roaring into the 21st century for windows.
The windows are all thermal pane windows. They're not leaking or anything. The problem
They
is...
are right now?
Yeah, the
Really?
whole building, yeah. And he said they're okay. There's one, I think, in the selectman's office that shows a little bit of gas leak that, you can see the fog in between the
And
panes.
these are fairly new windows here.
Yeah.
These are,
Yeah, and the other ones were in the 70s, and they are thermal pane. The problem is they were wood frames, and they weren't taken care of, so like I said, the sills are rotted. So as they do siding, we need to replace that. But when you do siding, they can wrap them. They can wrap them while they're doing them, and then you don't have the problem afterwards, and that's part of doing the siding. So we don't have to go 100,000 separate and have a window company to replace them. That's an estimate if that's what we did. But, no, we don't need to do all that. My thought is vinyl siding, 20 years, this is aluminum siding, look how good it looks up here at the church. We got vinyl siding at the fire department, look how good that looks. We don't want to paint this because it's 25 grand to paint this building right now. And according to Tom, this building was built just as lead paint was going. So they could not use lead paint primer. The primers they were just coming out with, they were reinventing the wheel, and the primers just did not work good. That's what we've got underneath this, and no matter how many times we spray and paint, that primer's not gonna hold any paint. It was brand new stuff, never worked before. So we're gonna have to strip it, and I guess he had said one year you guys had somebody come and sand it right down the mountain. That's the only part of the building, if you look around, you can see the swirl marks where they sanded. Only part of the whole building that's still holding paint. So we don't wanna paint it 25 grand every 4 or 5 years. If we paint it right now, we scrape it and paint it, 2 years from now, it's gonna look just like it does.
The moisture in the building,
Sweat.
when it goes out, it pushes the paint right off.
but I don't disagree that a lot of this stuff needs to be done. I think it's a matter of, I'd like to see the town get a capital improvement committee reorganized and, identify the needs, make the list, get a priority list, and then start, going for a warrant article or two every year with X amount of dollars, knowing that these are the big hurdles that the town's gonna have to overcome, and make a plan to proactively go after some of this stuff.
Well, you made the point, just from neglect. That's what it's been for all these years. Yeah, and it's good to keep the tax rate down, but, it's gonna catch up with you.
Yeah, the other one that's not even mentioned is the Lincoln School. We've had to close that to people. The foundation's gone, the electricity's been shut off by the electric company because it's not up to code. The fire marshal won't let them use the wood stove in there anymore. The building's just falling apart. And do we want to put $200,000 into saving that, or do we want to just sell it to somebody? And, look at the one I have on French Street. That building has been taken care of because it's been in private hands for all these years. And Skip Scott took care of it and Lasky before him. And that building's just as if it was brand new, but they didn't spend any money on that, on the Lincoln School, and that building's gonna fall apart, we're gonna lose it. So we've turned it over right now to the Conservation Committee, and they're gonna look into it and see if they can't get some funds to get it fixed up, or what they're gonna do. So we'll probably be bringing that one forward next year. Does the town of Acton want to spend money to fix it up, or do they want to sell it? Or the Conservation Committee found some grants and they're gonna fix it up.
Yeah, if we could go a combination of grants, private donation, and town, it's probably workable,
The
Yeah,
Lincoln,
but what do we want it for? It hasn't been used in years,
Yeah.
the Lincoln School, now, is that the one on
The Orchard
Orchard?
Road.
Right on the
Orchard
corner of
Road.
the Orchard.
Yeah.
4-H used it for a long time, but it's just too
Yes, they
unsafe
did.
to use now.
I remember that, yeah.
Boy, I haven't been in that
Well,
building
they
for years.
did something, they had the chimney repointed
Yeah, a
or
couple of years
Yeah.
ago.
straightened out not that long ago.
Yeah, but it's not lined, and they won't let, the fire marshal won't let them use a wood stove in it anymore, so there's no heat in it either.
Right.
So you
Well, it's
can't.
like any building that nobody lives in.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can we refocus on?
Yes.
on one? Okay, so 6 and 7, I think we probably discussed as much as we need to discuss at this point. Is that correct? The two bond concepts?
Well, the list that Andy made up we should talk about the salt shed.
Right, but it's not part of the warrant, so,
It's too late for this year to put
It
it,
isn't too late.
to put it on the warrant.
And let me tell you, if you let the salt shed go for another year, you're very likely, the roof is gonna collapse, and if somebody happens to be inside it when it collapses, and we don't have any insurance on it,
We do have liability insurance, correct?
well, how many years have we had to waive the insurance on that building? Is it like 5 years now, something like that?
It's been longer than
It
that.
was since 2009, I know that.
3 years.
When did you have somebody go in and fix it so it firmed it up? How long ago?
Boy,
It's been longer
I don't
than you
know,
think.
long time, 2004 maybe?
I mean, I think that of everything that's on this list, I mean, that is of the biggest concern, because, that- I mean, that is a liability. I mean, if somebody's in there and it just goes,
and the thing that,
Well, it was
No, we
being
just
looked
lose the-
at every
We lose the
year.
building, but we are covered with liability insurance. We're not, the building's not covered, the liability is covered.
Not for
And
replacement.
that's why nobody's done
They
anything.
won't replace it, but it's covered for life.
well, I mean, we hope nobody's in there when it goes.
Right.
But I mean,
For a while, Dave Cody was checking it every year, checking the elevation and looking for movement and things like that.
Kinda nice to know that, but, I mean, I'd love to see a bond, or something, or not actually a bond, but some kind of a capital fund show up on that salt shed.
has anybody checked with Milton to see what it cost for that?
I talked to Michelle because Shapley just put one up, and it cost him $500,000.
Yeah, but that was a whole building, right? That wasn't
But
a
that was,
tent kind of thing.
that was from,
Well, that's an
I mean,
elaborate building that
that's
Chapley's
big.
got.
But that's a salt shed.
that 500,000 was to start from scratch with a new building.
And we would have to too.
No,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have to.
Yeah, the foundation is sunk down in the ground.
The
That's what-
foundation has a problem in one spot, which I suspect if you dug it out and backfilled it and poured some more cement there, you'd be fine.
And my
The
understanding
problem
is
we
there's a
have
dump right
is
there.
Right.
nobody ever wants to look at doing something. Everybody wants to start over. That foundation with one of the new type roofs, like they did in Milton,
You're talking about the campus.
I bet you wouldn't have $75,000. And you'd solve the problem. The other problem, the reason the foundation has cracked is because when they pushed the sand and salt in there, they kept pushing it up against the back wall.
no, the foundation had settled over 8 to 10 inches in places.
Yes, it was
And-
put on a former stump dump.
And I believe
the
it-
stumps have rotted and...
At one time, when we did the study on the salt shed, we also dug some test holes, and we had recorded elevations of the foundation and found the areas where it had sunk. And what happened was as the foundation sunk, it actually, that building is all tied together, and it actually sucked down part of the roof.
Yeah.
So we hired a contractor, the town hired a contractor to go in and brace the roof in the peak where it had settled, so that it couldn't settle anymore. And we also jacked the building up off the foundation where it had sunk and shimmed it. And I think it was very wise that the town did that at the time, because it has gained us years of service. It's putting a Band-Aid on an inevitable problem, but I also think that in the meantime, that the town should still look at that and still maintain it, not put $1 million into it, but if it costs a couple $1,000 a year or whatever it costs to keep that building in service, I think we should do it.
Well, we have-
Until,
We have a salt shed account.
If you've got
There's
main-
maintenance down there. There's
if
no-
you've got maintenance money in that account, you should keep on putting the Band-Aids on it until we can come up with a plan
Would it require a warrant article to get a fact-finding committee that, tasked with coming up with results in 6 months or 8 months or a year? So at least we'd be started and not sort of continuing to defer the whole concept?
Well, we're not
until something happens?
writing any more warrant articles.
Right, but, I mean,
But
could
we can have
the
one-
selectmen just appoint a committee
Yeah,
without,
what Andy was talking about.
without the,
Getting
executive
look
body?
into Capital improvements, so I guess we've had one before, well, I don't know why it stopped, how long ago did you have one?
Long time ago.
I don't know.
10 years.
But the other thing that the town's gonna have to look at when they do that project is they're gonna have to do an evaluation of that site and see if that site's even feasible to put a new building on.
Right, you're right, Nancy, because that's all it was, is a stump dump in there, that whole area.
Yep.
See,
They were told at the time, and nobody wanted to listen.
if you were to put one of those tube and fabric, like they did in Milton,
Is it
on that site,
rub building?
that,
that what it is?
that roof probably weighs a quarter what the roof that is there now. Because that roof that's down there now is timber and,
Yep.
it's,
Actually, the actual design of that, I mean, that was all well and fine, I guess it was whoever, Pat Cole or whoever built that. I
Wasn't
mean,
there a grant from the state and all the towns bought it at the same time?
actually, the state of New Hampshire and I think the state of Maine, that was the salt
That happened to be the
shed they used to build. They built,
because there's one, I think there's one like in Vermont, that they come around the backside and they dump inside. They don't, they don't push the material in, they dump it in from the top. But it's made something like this.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, as you say, moving on.
Let's move on. Okay, so is 3 sufficiently discussed, or do you want to look at that again?
Oh,
Okay, so moving on to number 9. This is one of the standard articles. Oh, actually, excuse me, before we go to that, you want to continue on with the numeric, the financial articles? Or do you want to just go on down through?
I say
What say you?
just go through them, Paul, and if there's anything
All right.
that warrants discussion, we'll discuss it.
All right, some of them do require some discussion. Ted, I want to say, general observation, it appears that a lot of these things came from, or probably all of them, came from an early version of last year's warrant before even, say, you know that there was a number of legal opinions and that some of the warrant articles were crafted based on legal opinions.
Well, you gotta remember, we had 8 versions last year.
Well, yeah, true, but, what I started with is the one that was at town meeting.
We changed some because of the way they've been written over the years. When we get to those, I'll show you.
Okay, well,
We did that.
well, bottom line is, it appears that we were sort of, we spent a fair amount of money for legal opinions, and we crafted some warrant articles to where it looked like they were in pretty good shape, and we wouldn't have to...
Which ones are you talking
go
about?
for. Well, this is one example.
9?
That we wouldn't have to, Article 9, yeah, that we wouldn't really need legal opinion. Let me get rid of this thing here.
I don't have a copy of last year's warrants. So.
Well, I do right here, as soon as I get this thing to stop coming up.
Mercy, I'm
Too
glad to
bad.
see that you're feeling better.
At any rate, this is last year, okay? So last year, we had, one of the things we did is remove the phrase "and consent," because it was advice and consent. We know now that we can't do that, we're strictly advisory.
Okay.
And there was a couple of legal opinions that came down on April 14th, explaining why rephrasing it would be a good idea. So what we have is Article 9.
Yep, no, you're right. I'll change those back.
And then looking here, it's like, okay, we're back to 2010, and it still has "and consent."
Yeah, no problem. We'll change it back, because what happened was we had Lorraine do up the draft.
Yep.
So she must have taken it from the old draft instead of
Okay,
last year's.
so I'll perhaps save some wind and merely mention the article numbers if you kind of note them on
Yeah,
the
that's
fly.
okay. I'll note them.
Because I think, what we did last year, again, was, the result of legal opinion.
Yep.
There was good and valid reasons for doing it, and just backpedaling just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me.
No, I agree. And so I know exactly what happened there, so we will change that. So Article 9.
Article 9, yeah.
You know.
Article 9 is retro right
Okay, and it
now.
won't affect you guys as far to have a whole other meeting on this.
I think if we're at a version of what we had last year, I'm pretty sure we could just roll right into the opinion meeting. If we need to discuss it further, we can, but I don't see any contentious, I think most of my contention with a fair amount of this is exactly what we just talked about, that it was pulling from
Too old.
too old, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I'm glad you caught that, because we didn't.
well, it's fairly, any fair number of these things, carry forward, building maintenance fund, blah, 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 blah. That was 9, okay, so 10, okay, so 10 is, a variation on article from 2011. If we look at 2011 here, the phraseology is a little changed, but I think the important stuff is there. You might want to take a look at last year just for giggles, but the important part from last year was that the funds were going to come from the undesignated fund balance. Previously, we didn't say that. So if you look at Article 10 this year and Article 10 last year, the key points are all there. They're just sorted differently.
And I'll tell you what happened here. This year, we had the hurricane in September?
Yep.
August.
No.
But anyways, they put in for money, the fire department worked, yeah, that's right, the snowstorm came after that. The firefighters worked a lot of time, but when they didn't attend the meeting with the state, FEMA, and so the paperwork didn't correctly get done, so the term volunteer was used instead of hourly rate. So FEMA didn't reimburse us for the fire department. So the fire department did not get reimbursed for their hours until later in the year, until we discovered that this article says even if we don't get reimbursed by FEMA, they still get their hourly rate going out there. So they did get reimbursed, but it was months after they should have gotten reimbursed. What we've done with FEMA money now is when that comes in, we have a special account. So should we get a hurricane or a snowstorm or a flood or anything, that FEMA money will go towards paying the road commissioners first, pay them to do the work they're doing that week, and then we put in for the put the money in for FEMA, because FEMA's sometimes a year before you get that money. So that's why we had to change it to the undesignated fund, because if we use the FEMA fund that we established last year, there may not be any money in there.
And I thought, we do have the undesignated fund balance in line 2 here. It's just at the end on this one. So again, all of the key information is there. There's really only 2 pieces of information that one I'm questioning and the other one is just wrong. It's talking about Article 20 here. That's actually in the current form of the warrant. It's Article 23, that the highway department wages are discussed.
Okay.
And I had a question about this new phrase, to be assigned at the fire chief's discretion. I think you may have just answered it. Meaning before we were depending on FEMA to make some determinations.
We give some money, they give us some money back and then we will pay them, but the fire department has to give us the time for each firefighter, how many hours they spent during that.
Is that what this means, to be assigned at the fire chief's discretion, or does it mean something good and valid to you? Because it's not really forming a picture in my mind about what that really means and why it was added.
Oh, he has to determine whether, who on the job site is equal to a road commissioner, who's equal to a flagger, who's equal to a truck driver on the fire site, because they have, all different levels in the fire department as we have in the road committee or the road commissioners. So the fire chief will determine what job that person did and what hourly rate they will get for their time.
And this is gonna be all broke down, this is for FEMA.
Right.
All,
So say you got an assistant chief and he's chief that day because, the chief can't make it, so, day 2 of the hurricane, assistant chief is chief, he'll get the road commissioner's pay. The lieutenant, who was, 3 men down, will get the assistant chief's pay, so, because last year, we were going by state rates, and then we asked to change to these new numbers last year, so that's why we had to change the fire department to those new numbers, because they were passed last year. So instead of using the state rate.
I think you need to make a word change in here.
On which one?
It shouldn't say "an other fire emergency," it should just say "other emergency." Because the fire department at a hazardous material spill, they're gonna be required to be there. And if you just say "other fire emergency," I mean,
Fire department emergency?
no, just say "other emergency."
Yeah, yeah,
No, that's to cover them if they have a major fire where they go over 8 hours, then their stipend goes to hourly rate instead of getting a stipend.
If you just say "other emergency," anything that goes over 8 hours, the fire department can reimburse.
Do we have our?
The reason I'm talking about this
Last
is,
year is right here. Reimbursement from, or other fire emergency, it still says
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Looking back the year before,
just take the word "fire" out.
fire emergency, fire emergency.
I think that makes sense, Percy.
The reason, when I was selectman in Chester, we had to do this same thing, because we had a series of hazardous material spills, and we had to tie up men and equipment, and the people the state brought in were being paid $40, $50 an hour. And the poor firefighters weren't getting anything, period. And it's a matter of,
I think it makes sense.
I think it makes sense.
I mean, just
Yeah, I agree.
a couple of word changes.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we've inherited this phrase from way back, but
Makes it
if in
detailed.
fact that is our intent, that it be any emergency that these departments are involved in,
It's taking out one word.
why fog it?
you're not saying you're only gonna pay at fire emergencies, you're saying,
Any
and
emergency.
I'll tell you, a hazardous material spill, if it's a big one, can last for days.
Okay, moving on, Article 11. Okay, comment here, last year's changes have been rolled back, so if we take a look at last year, we did have a legal opinion, I would say there's no real legal change here. They wanted to make it a little more flowery. I don't think the effect was necessarily different, but what we ended up with is what you see in front of you here for 2011. And what we have now is kind of rolling back from 2012 to 2010.
Yeah, no, tell me which one's the lawyer, and we're gonna change them all back, because you're right, we did spend.
And this was for Leah Rachin,
Yep,
Bergen and Parkinson.
yeah, she wrote up the whole.
Yep. So anyway, that was Article 11 now would want to would want to look substantially like Article 11 in 2011.
Yeah, the money's gonna stay the same, so it's just, they're
Right.
gonna do the legal wording.
Right, so in fact, it looks like it would just be copied over, because we don't have to have any year changes or anything on this. It's not dated. Okay, that's 11. Moving on to 12. Once again, so here we have on 12, we have a legal opinion. Come on. Now, this one actually turned into 2 articles. They had recommended that we have the article and then create a new warrant article to waive foreclosure, because warrant articles are supposed to deal with separate and distinct orders of business, blah, blah, blah. So what we ended up with is Article 12 and Article 13, one of which had slightly rephrased article from the previous year. So this is what, 2010 here. That was cloned out into 2 articles, 12 and 13, it was the waiving foreclosure element that was moved to a separate article, and now we've gone back to one article. So, do with that what you will, but,
Well, I'm gonna change them all. Like I said, we used the wrong,
okay, so we will in effect then have to add another article as what we did last year then?
right.
Okay.
Now, go back to last year's, where you showed, was it 12 and 13?
12 and 13. So this one is really, this is basically it right here. That element of the previous year, which is 2010, was pulled back.
Yeah,
So the year before, it's talking about waiving foreclosure, and this is substantially the way it looks this year.
It's gotta go back to last year's.
So 12 and 13 last year is what we need to emulate moving forward for this year for 12. Okay, we all set on this one? Article 13. Okay, so this one looks good to me. Last year, obviously we had different dates, but both days were Tuesdays. We've kind of bopped around from year to year. Those were Fridays the last couple of years before then. But they're Tuesdays, they're 6 months apart, and these are valid dates. Looks fine to me. If I wanted to really quibble, I'd say, gee, it's missing a period at the end of that sentence. But legally, I cannot throw stones at it.
We should have you type these up.
You should.
Save a lot of time.
At least send me an advance copy 3 days in advance. Okay,
You've been trying to tell you that, oh, no.
That's when we got it done.
okay, so, this one, dates matched what is stated in Article 13, except the 20012 should be 2012, right here. Little typo there. So the dates, the October 16, 2012, April 16, 2013 match to the previous article, which looks fine, maximum rate
200.
7%.
Got one extra zero in there.
Been here a long time.
So last year, we had it at 7%, 7%, 9% back in 2009.
That's set by the state.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that looks fine except for that typo. I mean, I assume it's a typo. We'll be generous and say, that's a typo. Okay, 15. Authorization to accept tax prepayments. Oh, actually, no, we'll catch up to it. 15, I don't see anything wrong with that. We didn't mungle this one at all. It's been pretty much cookie cutter for a number of years. No contention on town floor, no amendments, it just is what it is. Okay, Article 16. This is another one where we've got rollback. So we had this article in 2009, pretty much the same in 2010. There was amendments on town floor, so obviously there's a little imperfection here. 2011, we got a legal opinion about what to do with this thing. And basically, it's making application and executing a little bit more legalese. Probably didn't effectively change what we're going to do with it. But 2012 now is back to 2010. And the only other comment I have on that is, looking back last year, if we look at 2010, the thing that had happened on town floor is that, obviously it's phrased the way it was in Article 13 in 2010, but if you look at the amendment, we want to get rid of local. So if we got any kind of grants, donations, fees, et cetera, we'd be able to accept them. And so on town floor, we made that change, and that little word local is once again cropping up. So that will be taken care of if we pay a little more attention to what was going on in Article 17 last year. We'll just be able to, I believe, cookie cut that into this year. and then we'll be good.
You're saying they added it in 2011, they added local on?
No, no, no. In 2010, we removed it on town floor. But apparently, we took the warrant from 2010, not looking at what happened on town floor, to formulate this article. So anyway, that problem did not exist in 2011. And so it's kind of a moot point. If we adhere to not rolling back last year's changes, we don't have to worry about that second sentence. We don't have to worry about the local. It's not there last year. All set?
Keep them rolling.
Keep them rolling. Okay. Snowmobile reimbursement funds. Fair number of changes last year. We rolled them back. So what we had last year is, the reasoning, I won't go over the detail, but the reasoning was that if all or part of such funds are appropriated to a snowmobile club, one of the conditions that appropriations must be the club's trails are open to the public. So 2010, we didn't allow for that. 2011, we did. It managed to get through Warrant and Finance. It managed to get through town floor without amendments. So my suggestion here is we, again, cookie cut Article 18 into Article 17 to replace what we laboriously crafted last year as an improvement on the year
It'll be
before.
Article 17, because we're going to be bumping up by adding 13.
Right, so 18 will be the 18, theoretically. Assume nothing. All right. So now we're getting into government. Fair number of changes here. Most of them have to do with changes that occurred in the budget book since we met on March 31st, and I will detail those here once we actually get this thing to do what I'm trying to do. Okay. So, what we have is 601, 188, actually. Excuse me a second. Okay, so what we had is a 1.2% increase in this line item from last year. Pretty much holding the line. All right, so there's the dollar amounts. If you want to look at last year's individual detail from the budget book, there was nothing on town floor last year. The year before, there was some changes made on town floor, and some changes made the year before.
John Warren, this one.
Yep, he's showed up a few times in crafting this. Okay, so here's some observations. So on all these numeric things, they were all discussed at the Warrant and Finance workshop on March 31st, using the budget book from March 16th, right here. So here's some changes noticed. So in the municipal management, the 10205 up here, we had discussed a lower figure, and it's been increased by 5,000 due to an increase in building maintenance, and I believe you addressed that a little bit earlier when you were talking about windows and just
No, that's not
siding and...
increase. Last
Yep.
year, our budget was 25,000.
Yes.
And then I wanted to carry over. We had knocked 20,000 off as we were going through our first stage of the budget, because we didn't spend, like I said, 12, 14,000 we had left. So in order to try and get our budget down, we had taken 5,000 off. Because we started having this discussion about doing outside, we put the 5,000 back in to ask, so the building maintenance is actually flatlined for the last 3 years. It's been 25,000 each year.
And presumably, some of that is going to end up rolling, or are we going to actually spend it this year?
Well, that depends on what happens with fixing the town hall. If they vote to borrow all that money to fix the town hall, then that's going to be 25,000, and whatever's left goes into the general fund.
So it may be spent, it may lapse into general, or it may end up going in another article next year to roll over into some capital
So you
account.
do another
depending.
wall on the building.
All right, sounds good. All right, next item here, sub-account. These are sub-accounts within, oh, excuse me, no, they're not, 10213. 10213, town clerk tax collector. This is just an FYI, I mentioned this last year as well. In that figure, town clerk, 10213, excuse me. 10213. Oh, yeah, all right. Sorry. All right, assessment down here, including the loan repayment. So that loan repayment is $55,000 and change, and it's the same every year, and in another 2 years, we'll have that paid off. The bond will be gone.
Yeah, the assessment also has a change from what we talked about at, on that Saturday, because we just negotiated a contract with O'Donnell's to take on another year, and they gave us a flat figure to cover everything, and they've taken on some more work, so that figure has gone to 25,000, so I believe we had to bump that up like 3,000.
Right.
4,000.
So we got right. So we have 3 sub-accounts affected here. They're not in the warrant article, but they are in the budget book. For clerical, they added like 3,380 and change for a clerk for doing the assessing. As Ted mentioned, we have an extra $3,000 in the actual assessing account, and in the contracted, there was an error. The cartographic maps online yearly maintenance was intended to be included in the budget initially. It was not, and it's just being added to correct that. So as I reviewed this today in the new budget book that you guys were emailed, and that's changes since March 31st, that is reflected in the budget book, and that is reflected in this warrant article. And then a typo, right at the bottom here, 1002-12 should be 102-15. And last year, it in fact was 102-15. And it actually, I think in the budget book, that's code enforcement and inspections. I don't know if in inspections was it deliberately removed or not. I don't see a substantial legal difference there, but I merely point that out, that it is a little different from last year. All set?
Yeah, inspection's part of enforcement, so don't need a vote.
Okay, redundant. The Department of Redundancy Department. Okay,
Department of Silly Walks.
yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
So, anyway, the total here and the individual amounts do prove out with these changes to what we're expecting to see here, so. So it comes down to, for changes, it's just that typo at the bottom. Everything else looks good. Okay, so if you want a detail on the reval from a couple years ago, that's what that is. I don't think we need to go into that. Oh, excuse me. Health and welfare. So that's gone down 39.8%. So that's a wonderful thing. And as I recall, I think that has to do with workfare.
Yeah, we had, the year before last, we went way over budget with general assistance. So we had upped it from 15,000 to 25,000 last year. And this year, we only spent $6,000, so we decided to bring it back to the 15,000, so we took 10,000 off. And
So it's rolled back to the same number that it was for a couple years earlier.
It was 3 or 4 years. But we actually, because of, the economy and the oil prices going up, we were doing a lot more. But to be honest, we also made some changes as far as how we were giving it out. We didn't have it any time, any day that the town hall was open, you can come in and get it. It was Thursdays only, from 4 to 8. And if you were capable of working, you had to work. And the state allows all these things. So some people that would come in, they would get their assistance, but then wouldn't come and work their hours, so then by law, we were allowed to turn them down the next time. So that took a lot of people away also. So the changes we made, plus the fact that hopefully the economy's getting better, we went from spending $22,000 last year to spending a little under $6,000 this year.
So was that rolling into the general fund, or?
The general assistance?
No, well, I mean, if we budgeted last year 25,
25.
the $6,000 was spent to date this year, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
We only spent 6 out of the 25.
But we did budget 25.
Right.
So that's rolling, that's
That was
lapsing,
the general
right?
fund, and then that's where we get the money that we use to make sure that the tax rate, like last year, we put $125,000 forward. That comes from all those things that didn't get spent the year before and rolled over. We used that to bring the tax rate down so that that we don't go up on the mill rate.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Okay, Article 20, public safety, we're going up 4.4%. I'm not going to go into the detail of what that involves. Can check out your cable channel for the March 31 discussions of the detailed budget. Okay, so last year, it looked
It's mostly
substantially
fuel.
similar.
The fire department, their increase is mostly fuel, and also some building maintenance, because what happened with their building maintenance budget last year was they did a requested, the state to come in and do an inspection, as opposed to having the state walk in and give them an inspection, because then you get paid fines. So they had an inspector come down, and they spent almost all of their yearly maintenance budget just on fixing things that the inspector found. So they didn't have a lot of money to do things that needed to be done like we should be doing on this building. So that's why I think they increased their maintenance budget just a little bit. But the biggest cost is their fuel cost. I mean, diesel is what, $4.50?
Well, and that's showing up in a lot of departments too, so.
Exactly, that's the increases in every department except for the 3% raise.
And I'm comfortable with the way this article is written. The only comment really is in comparison to when we discussed it on March 31st, the total is $10,800 less, because at the time, the budget included, the fire department budget included $10,800 for the new self-contained breathing apparatus equipment that they need to purchase this year, and that's rolled into a separate article. So this is more of an operating budget than it would have been if the equipment was in there.
Yeah, the reason we put it into a separate budget is because all of their tanks are getting old, so they have several to change this year, they'll have several to change next year, and several to change the year after that. So if we do a few each year under a special article, and then start a line item for the future repair of those, then it's built into their budget every year. Instead of them coming 10 years down the road and saying, okay, we need 50 new tanks, or 40.
I think we made that pretty clear there on the 31st.
Yeah.
You know, when we went through that.
So this next article is that equipment. What this reflects here is a 4.4% increase for the department without the SCBA equipment. With it, the total department reflects an 11.6% increase from last year, meaning rolling from this one figure to these two figures aggregated.
And it's for the fire department, not the Erie department.
Not the what department?
Another typo.
Yes, fire is misspelled. It's actually local, not coming from Ireland, I think.
Yes.
But anyway, you know, the aggregate of this plus the previous article amounts to the total in the budget book. So, personally, I'm good with this one. Assuming you, I guess the only quibble will be, gee, do you really agree with this or not about purchasing the equipment? But it looks like it's a no-brainer because they have to replace them after a certain amount of time.
And they can't go into a fire without air.
Yep. Hold your breath. Practice that underwater breathing. Okay, so Article 22, fire truck. Last year and the year before, we basically started this capital account, 2008, that's going to be 2009, 10, 11, 12, there, 10, 11, and 12. So that's where the $100,000 that we currently have comes from. They're going up 50% in what is requested this year because we're trying to escalate the rate at which we're going to get these funds.
Yeah, because the other thing is the truck has gone from 300,000 to 350,000 since we started this, just the cost of the truck. So the sooner we can do it, the more we can save.
Yep.
A lot of money.
Just what, 2 years, and it's gone up $50,000?
Grand in 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think we've beat this one to death unless somebody's got something further to discuss. Okay, compensation for road crew and equipment. This is another fun one, because we beat a lot of bugs out of this last year, and we got them all back again.
You did?
Yeah, a lot of them, including, Cubit.
Okay, so this will go to the lawyer one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it went to the lawyer last year, so theoretically, if we just,
No, what I'm
roll
saying,
it.
we'll take the 2011 one.
Yes.
Take our 23
Yes,
out, put-
and two other sections of this, other than, misspellings, if you look in patrol trucks, where is it? Oh, yeah, right above the patrol trucks, halfway down, there's another, so there's 2 cubits. How many cubits in a, okay, and then also, there was, we really danced around quite a bit on the phraseology up here, talking about the loader capacity and the loading at stockpile. Last year, we settled on what I think is a fairly rational set of phraseology, which is so much per hour per additional cubic yard capacity. So you start with your 1 yard capacity, 3740, right above here. And then if you have a greater than 1 yard capacity, you continue to add per cubic yard capacity additional the 2015.
So we'll just take that whole thing and put it in.
Right. This year,
We use the 2010 template instead of the 2011.
so this year, we're talking about 2015 per hour per cubic yard. It's not talking about capacity, it's not talking about the 3740 as a starting point, and it's very nebulous. Next item down, loading at stockpile, was also, gee, what is the intent here? Last year, we managed to get it to $2 per cubic yard moved. Unambiguous. Now we've got $2 per hour per cubic yard. What is that? Capacity, it's just a mess. So, as far as I can tell, the numbers are all the same as last year. It's just the phraseology of the cubit versus cubic and those 2 items.
So, going by that, if a guy had a 3-yard loader,
Yep.
he's gonna get 3750, 2015 twice.
Yes.
So you're gonna be 30 and 40 is
Yes.
70.
But you wouldn't get it if you looked at that phraseology or what we had in, what did we, oh yeah, we went from state rate. The last 2 years, or several years prior to then, we were at state rate. So we didn't have, we had to actually roll out for last year's warrant, we actually had to start out by rolling out phraseology that we had before we went to state rate. Anyway, so it was kind of not so good. So we ultimately honed it to what you see here for 2011. There were some, as there tends to be every year, some quibbling about cutting edges and bolts and whatnot, and depending on the year, sometimes that flies and sometimes it doesn't. And last year, there was some discussion on town floor. There may be some of that this year as well. But assuming we want to have a warrant article that is roughly the same as it was last year, we should have it roughly the same as it was last year. And it's a little too rough this year. Moving on. Number 24, Public Works, that is flat from last year.
Actually, it should be down.
And I'm seeing flat.
Oh, wait a minute. No, never mind, the paving's in a different article.
Yes. And I'll point that out in the next line item down. We'll see if we include that other item, it's going to actually be down a little bit.
Now, District 1 and District 2,
North and south.
do you have these together, or are they separate?
As far as the paving money? Or this money?
No, if...
They each have separate accounts.
If we're gonna, okay, so if we're gonna make a recommendation for District 1 and a recommendation for District 2.
Well, no, we would just handle the article itself as a whole, unless we want to change some of these numbers, but...
On the floor, you can make a motion to change down in any part of that. Say, this is why I want to change it down, but...
No, I'm
it's gonna
just
affect
saying,
the whole thing.
I'm saying here as the Warrant and Finance.
No, you're not going to vote on 105-10, 105-12, 105-20, you're going to vote on Article 24, so you're voting yes or no for the whole article.
And if we vote no, we would want to, obviously it needs to happen in some form. We would recommend what it should, the total dollar amount reflected as such and such, But anyway, so what we have here is some differences. Oh, excuse me, no. The only real difference is we've sort of swapped the accounts around to be numerically sorted, I assume. So the winter and summer, last year was summer, winter, summer, winter. This is winter, summer, but the numbers are, as far as I can tell, the same. 93, 15, yeah. So it's all the same stuff, and it does prove to the budget book. Any further discussion on that?
Which comes up to, where are we here?
Transfer station, 26.
Okay, so now we're moving up to, okay, I still have, actually, I should remove, let's see, 2009. The reason I still have these next items, the 2009, 2010, is because these items still are here to prove the total dollar amounts for each of the prior years. I'm going to get rid of the 2009 next year, or somebody will, or nobody will, depending on whether I'm around next year. But anyway.
We got 5 openings now, 5 people.
We'll see.
Public Works.
We are actually moving on to road surfacing now, which is a form, which is in Public Works. As you can see here, this was flat, looking at the spreadsheet, and if you look at if you include now item 25, warrant article 25, in with Public Works, it's all part of it, but it's a separate warrant article. This year, we're down 2.6% on all of Public Works, which includes Articles 24 and 25, because of the decrease in the paving budget.
Okay, now, wait a minute. As far as surfacing, are we gonna get any surfacing before June 30th?
Yes, both districts have already contracted their projects for this year, and some of them should have already been started. What happened was, we went out to bid last August, and we got these bids, but of course they all put a disclaimer in there, should the price of oil go up, then we will be increasing our price. So what they did is they went out to bid again for the individual job. So here's what I want you to do. They came out and looked at it. Turned out that the guy that gave us the lowest bid in August also ended up giving us the lowest bid now. So we are sticking with the same contractor. But as far as I know, both districts have started on their paving projects right now. I can't tell you where they are. I can find out, but I
Well, I know Nason Road is
Yeah, Nason Road, they're gonna grind.
but isn't that capital improvement? Isn't that a capital improvement project down there?
No, that's a paving. We're doing so much paving each year.
That includes the prep work then?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just surfacing, it's prepping and surfacing.
Yeah, just like when we did San Pedro, that bid included everything.
It's for the
They ground it
project.
up, and then they paved it, and then they did the ditching and put the stone down.
And the standing I heard, and I had, that Nason Road was gonna be one of the capital projects. Not a road that was gonna be resurfaced.
Well, what we decided to do after we did the capital project for San Pedro,
Yeah.
we got a bid, and they ended up coming in $14,000 cheaper than what we asked the town for. But because it was done on a special warrant article, we could not use that money for anything else. It could not be used for more paving that year, so while we had that equipment here,
So we didn't get any last year. That's what,
no, we got San Pedro.
that was the only thing, that was the only one.
Right,
But that was a capital
That was a
project.
separate warrant article. And then after that, we decided this past summer, instead of doing a separate warrant article to do this road or this road, we would give them back their old paving, accounts, so that then they could decide where to pave.
Well, and
See, if
Article
we had-
26 last year was for
But the
that
thing
as
of it
well.
is, last year,
No, they didn't have a paving account last year, did they? We just started, last year was the first.
Right, but this was to take unexpended monies and put them somewhere so they wouldn't lapse away from the roads department.
Right, so we wrote that in too. but
Right.
We've also put it that they don't have to go for a separate warrant article for the roads that they want to pave.
Right.
Last year, the town voted to give them $110,000 for Scott and $90,000 for David for this year, this year ending. We decided next year, they each get $90,000. So then they decide which part of the town or which roads they want to fix. So that's why you see the 2.6 decrease. we equaled it out and lowered it.
Okay, so capital improvement account, is that gonna tap out the capital improvement account, or do we have more than $68,016 in there?
No, we call it the road capital improvement
Fund?
account.
Yeah,
And that's where those funds go, and that's also where our Europe funds go. We get monthly, we get...
So that's ongoing.
Yearly,
Huh?
once a year, right? Or
I
they
know,
paid out
it's-
monthly?
It's monthly, but it's something like $67,000 a year
Right.
that we get from the state. Before, that was being used on little projects here and there, and then the end of the year would come and the state sent us all this paperwork, where'd you fix it, and nobody knew what we fixed. So now, we take that money and then we have documentation like we used it last year towards the San Pedro. This year, whatever projects they do, you say they're gonna grind and do something someplace, that road will go to
Mason
the
Road,
state and we'll
yeah.
show them that we used the Europe funds.
They've already
That's all it can be used
did it.
for is tarring
Capital
and repairing
improvement.
the road.
Capital improvement, yeah.
Yeah, so we open an account, so the Europe
Right,
fund
that's-
goes in there, the leftover money from this year's paving, if they only spent 50,000, the other 40 will go into that. So we're trying to build up a base for the roads too, because the roads are getting bad, and if we get Milton Mills Road and Fox's Ridge Road back from the state,
Ted, how much money is in the stockpile reserve account?
right now, I'm gonna say not much, maybe $8,000, I'm not sure it's even that much.
And we're level funding the stockpile account from last year, the 90,383?
Correct.
And have we looked at, you know, I had mentioned earlier at another meeting that, you know, the municipalities all over the state and other states in New England that had a surplus of material left over from the mild winter. And it was mentioned that there was some material left over from last winter in the shed.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if that material...
There was money left, I don't know how much material was left, but there was money left in that account last year that we actually used to pay for, what was it that we went over on that we had to pay for? Oh, last year's winter plowing. We went over by $28,000 last year, so we used money from the transfer station and money from the stockpile account to make up for the difference of $28,000 that we had in additional plowing last year. So from what I understand from both road commissioners, we used more sand this year, salt and sand, but didn't have a lot of plowing, so they'll have money left in their, you know, in their regular maintenance accounts, but not as far as the,
Well,
stockpile account.
supposedly 21,000 between the two of them, right?
What's that?
There was 21,000, this year's,
Yeah, 21,000.
between the two road commissioners.
Right, because you gotta remember the 90,000 also includes buying all the salt and sand and stuff
Yes,
like that.
yes.
okay. Questions I have about this one, have to do with this. Essentially, what we had last year is Article 26, so that unexpended monies would be put in that capital fund. This year, there's no provision, so my understanding is if it's not spent, they're gonna lose that money, it's gonna go to the general fund.
No.
We're gonna roll over the capital account, but we're not putting
Yeah,
lapsed
again-
funds in the capital
Again,
account.
this is 2010, 2011, we created the account for that money to be rolled into, so yes, you're right, we gotta change that one too.
So we need to add the equivalent of Article 26 to this year, so that unexpended money,
2011's,
right,
and,
Article 26.
yeah. So since you have that, you can use that from here, and, we will get the changes made on ours.
Okay. So the answer to that would be yes. And I also commented that, you know, that does blend District 1 and District 2 funds. They started off as separate districts, but, you know, at least communally, they keep the funds.
Well,
More discussion?
let's say the 21,000 that was between the two road commissioners.
Right.
I thought we discussed that on the 31st, that was gonna stay within their budget. That wasn't going back to general fund.
It is, if they put that new article in, it won't go back to general fund.
It won't go back in, okay.
Right now, it would lapse to general fund.
Yes.
So the next time we see this at the, or presumably earlier than the actual meeting where we vote on it, but the next iteration of this article will have a new article. So there's 2 new articles now that we've talked about so far. And I think there's going to be 3, but we'll see. Okay. Article 26, transfer, I guess we haven't talked about it. Okay, going up 2.4%.
Okay, transfer station, is a 3% raise for all employees. Some of them hadn't had a raise in 8 years. The tipping fees have gone up, and of course, fuel cost. When there's no new equipment or anything else, and
Yeah, it's pretty flat. There is a legal opinion last year that was received and never acted upon. I don't necessarily see the need to belabor the point. If we didn't act upon it last year, we probably won't this year, but I include it here just to show it, to be more specific.
I was up there today, up to the transfer station today, talking to Bob Mann, and as far as, like he mentioned something about any surplus, that leave it right there, turn it right back in, let them absorb that, or when we come down to the warrants and stuff and say, well, listen, instead of 150,000, we've saved 10,000, so we're gonna ask for 140,000. So he had mentioned that today, just to keep something of that in mind, maybe.
What is going to happen? We haul our stuff down to Biddeford now, right?
Yep.
What's going to happen if they close that?
what, they're talking about closing that?
They want to.
I know we've had several people come in and talk to Bob about sending it to different places. What do they call that place where you dump everything, you recycles and everything, and then you dump it on the floor and they sort it all out with?
Tipping?
No, it's
Yeah.
a new way of supposedly recycling.
Yeah.
I think that's what
Separate.
Mr. Hannon was talking about doing down here.
They separate everything.
So we've had them come in, and, yeah, it's recycling, but they have a new term for it, where you put everything.
Domain.
Yeah.
I think it's
So,
abbreviated PU.
Single stream recycling.
There it is, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
But Bob just got
Single
back.
stream,
Single stream, you can commingle everything.
Yeah.
They dump it out and separate it.
That's what they do.
conveyors go everywhere,
Yeah,
That's
separate.
what they do in the new plant down in Portland.
Good luck trying to read a bottle recycling label after it's been in the bottom of a trash heap. Anyway.
And Bob just got back from, it was a 3 or 4 day course the state put on for transfer managers, and he's got a lot more knowledge than he had before, so.
He did say that, yeah.
We'll leave it up to him what he decides we need to do. And he's in contact with them all the time, so he'll let us know if that's, a worry for us. But with this budget, he's planning on our trash going there all next year anyways, because he hasn't said anything to us, so.
The benefit, you mean?
Isn't there some kind of a lawsuit over there to Biddeford or something?
Well, there was a lawsuit many, many years ago, and that was settled by having the towns that joined in on it be able to dispose of their trash at a certain rate, guaranteed rate, for a certain number of years. I believe that's about ready to expire, would be my guess.
Well, I know
Well, they
the
had a
last
fire.
thing in the paper, they were, the town of Biddeford and Casella Waste were ready to shut.
Well, they had a fire or something over there, and I guess, I don't know what happened, but the town says, we've had about enough.
But that,
They've been saying that for quite a while.
that, new style of recycling for.
Single stream.
Single stream recycling, even if it's more expensive to truck it and recycle like that, there must be a cost savings as far as how we handle it at the transfer station.
I would think there'd be a cost savings, or they wouldn't have done it in the first place.
Well,
I mean,
the reason why they kept it the way it was at the transfer station is by our separating it, we can still sell our different products.
that's right.
And it's a point of whether trucking it to resell it is, cost you more money than you're getting for the product itself.
Well,
or
we've been
not.
doing a pretty good job last couple of years of increasing that ratio, and, you know,
Well, when Bob,
$50,000 a year we're making on, so.
it's pretty impressive.
We're generating that much revenue?
We're making good money on metal, I imagine.
That's pretty, that's good.
Plastic.
Plastic, now that we have a plastic
Baler.
compactor, baler, you know, all the bottles and glass that go out of there, and, I mean, you go up there on a day that one of those trucks comes in to get the recyclables, they pack those trucks full.
It's quite impressive. It's quite impressive to see.
Well,
I tell
and
you.
besides
For just a
which-
small station up there.
And they're also pulling out all the returnables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the people in,
Getting money back from that.
the people in Acton should be commended because we have one of the best recycling rates of any town in Maine. And, you know, you go up there and you don't, you know that people are recycling because you go in there, and then when we met with Bob, I can't remember what he said,
What?
25,000?
I think it was 45,000 this year. Yeah.
There's a big number there.
Yeah, it is.
It's good.
Yeah, but we could do a lot better. We still got a lot of people in town that are not recycling, and we know that, but, you know, we can't do anything about it. If more people would do it, you can tell when you're pulling the dump, if somebody just pulls up to the dumpster and then back out the door, they're not recycling. You know, you can tell just by the way they go. But if you go in sometimes, and every car goes right from dumping into the dumpster, right over to the recycling.
Yep.
And it doesn't take long. And
It's amazing how much of a difference in the volume it makes.
I'm throwing less in the dumpster than I am in the recycling. So, you know, they're definitely making money off of the stuff that we're bringing in there.
Just gotta listen.
So,
Just gotta
people of
listen
Acton, rah-rah.
when things in.
More of the same.
They go crash, bang.
Okay, so, all of Public Works, which includes Article 23 through Article 26 in this blocked-out section here, is down 1.1%. So, here. Moving on, Article 27. We've gone up a little bit in the Conservation Committee, but it's very low dollar amount in the first place. Let's see, what did we have last year? Okay, nothing much to talk about last year, or this year, or probably years earlier. Okay, nothing in 2009. So we've only had this for a couple of years. Not much to say about it. Okay, planning and development, forester's stipend, this, I believe, is the same as it's been, yeah, 538, yeah, going back. Okay, so we had the comprehensive plan implementation earlier on, so we had a little extra overhead there. Since 2010, it's been unchanged, and the mix is unchanged. It's basically $500 stipend plus FICA and miscellaneous government stuff that brings it to 538.
And having that forester is well worth it. We just finally settled something that happened 10 years ago, I think it was, when they cut the trees down in the...
Oh, that was that lot in the middle there?
Right 10 years ago, but quite a while ago.
Yeah, and we just finally sent the check to the
Yes.
family. So that's all settled.
County tax, so that's going up 1.8%.
Yeah, how's that work? They cut everything and then go up too? I don't understand how they get away with that.
Yeah, our assessed value is a few percent less than it was last year.
Yeah, but I mean, the services the county's cutting, that we're gonna end up picking up.
Yes.
And they increased our taxes too.
Yes.
Double whammy.
306, 321, 308, 314, so it bounces around. And that is what it is as well. Not much to talk about there.
That's right.
And cemetery, last year, okay, so this has bounced a little bit, and then it's had to do with that marker, the type of markers that were purchased. So,
Cemeteries.
yep. So we went up 130%, then we went up 43%, then now we're going down 9.1%. So we're sort of topped off at 1650, we're down to 1,500 this year. I'm not hearing much of any commentary about that number. I'm presuming we're still doing the durable, going from plastic to durable, we're still doing durables, except we don't need quite as many of them now. And I think I heard that the reason we went from durable is they were getting stolen. So they're probably still getting stolen. Really nice, stealing from graveyards. Shows a lot of class.
Now, this question here, cemetery, are you done?
Yes.
Cemeteries, Ted. Question, Ted.
Yeah.
On the cemeteries. A lot of cemeteries that are on private land.
Right.
I think we talked about this once before. Now, the town cemetery association or whatever, we're taking care of these little cemeteries that were on private land.
All they do is they have to do veterans' graves. Only the cemeteries that have veterans in them.
Okay, well, they used to cut the grass and they used to clean up the cemeteries, and now they're not gonna do that?
No, it was the guy, whoever worked for the town cutting the fire department cut here and did the cemeteries. But it's the same as the private roads, can't use public money on private property, so we can't pay anybody to go in and cut those places anymore. There are still some people on the conservation committee that go in and weed whack and trim trees and stuff on their own, but we can't pay anybody to do it.
General
That's been 4 or 5 years now.
General comment, I'm reminded about this
5 years
one.
behind, I guess.
You see the department numbers. I find it rather handy to try to tie to the budget book, where you actually have department numbers. Last year, we had one as well. This year, we don't. There are a number of articles, some of which we are recovering by going back 2 years. There may be some this year that don't actually have the department number where we had it last year. Not quite sure why it was removed. I think it doesn't take up much space, and it makes a lot of sense to, it's a little more transparent to show where that number came from. So, for instance, last year, we see that, it's departments, you'll go in the budget book, Department 10901, you'll find that number. It's not here, and it's not in a large number of the articles this year.
Again, because we used 2010's,
Well,
2011.
well, I think in 2010, we had it. Yeah, we did, in this one.
So I don't know where this one came from.
Right. So it's missing.
Well, yeah,
So I guess what I'm saying is, for articles that aren't recovered by going back to 2010, please kind of keep that in mind, that if we can restore the department numbers, that would be a delightful thing for transparency. Okay, moving on, Recreation Department, we're going down 4.3%, and I think that was because the participation is actually a little lower this year than last year.
Down even more. They don't see
town cash.
They didn't have enough for baseball, and I guess they're not going to have enough for soccer, so
That kind of bites.
this may be
Wait a minute, where's
going
that?
away, sad to hear. But I guess a lot of the kids are joining leagues outside of Acton because we're not getting enough kids with inside of Acton.
He had it at the last voting.
Now, is Acton Recreation the only group that currently uses that field in North Acton?
I don't know.
So if in fact Acton Recreation, at some point, does not have sufficient participation and feels the need to disband, we're gonna need to figure out what to do with that field.
Or town owns it.
Yeah, but if nobody's using it, so not necessarily an issue now, but
Still have to maintain it.
people,
Well, you gotta.
use Acton Recreation.
No, the town is changing. I mean, we're top-heavy right now, and then for a while, we're gonna be bottom-heavy. I mean, we've got 30 kindergartners coming in this year. So, and then right now, we've got a lot of high school kids.
30
So-
kindergartens? 30 kindergartens, you said?
Yeah.
So the mix of
Last time
teachers is gonna change.
When we were doing the budget, it was 30. I don't know how many more there are now. Has there been more, Andy?
I don't know, they did the kindergarten screening last week, but I don't know what the actual number is, but it's a big incoming class.
Wow.
So that means, as this goes on, we're losing the upper level classes, but we're gonna have to start building up teachers in the lower level classes. And the same thing for kids playing sports and stuff like that. So it's kind of an odd time right now. You know, the high school and the 8th graders, and then we've got moved on to other teams. So we've got this lapse where there aren't a lot of kids to play soccer and baseball, but it's gonna start up again if this is any idea.
The cycle will start, it'll change again.
Yeah, if this is any idea, we got 30 new kindergartners, 35-year-olds go to the school system in 1 year. You know, who knows what's gonna happen next year, and then the sports teams will have to pick up again. So just a new generation, changing the, you know, the residents are changing, so.
Demographics.
Exactly. Yeah, we're the same way with family. I mean, we're top heavy right now with old folks like me.
Elderly.
Oh, folks like me.
Yeah, you're looking a little bit peaked there, Ted, you know?
Yeah, only since I took the office of selectmen. I wasn't even gray before I came.
You have a lot more children now.
Well, look at Obama. You see how gray he is,
Yeah,
huh?
he's definitely grayed out. Okay, so,
Think of what it'll be like after 2 more terms, Ted.
Be bald.
Yeah, I'll be in the sidecar, not driving a motorcycle.
I really think it's those kids that he's teaching down there at school. I think that's what's making it all gray.
They keep me young. Yeah, because I'm running all the time trying to find out where they are.
Keeping the dirt, keeping all the deer in the pasture and all that.
That's right.
dams, okay. Gotcha. Okay, so for donations, we're going up 19.4% in what was requested. Last year, we went up 32%. The year before, we went up 44%. You know, that's generally a reflection of the greater need out there, and speaking of the county, what the county is doing or not doing now for these agencies, it's just that well's dried up. This year, however, there's another factor, which is the dams, which I think is going to be my only point of discussion, in generally speaking. Oh, other than to say that there's a little issue here, Acton Food Pantry, $3,000. It's in
Yeah,
here-
they've never asked
it's-
for money before.
It's in here twice.
Oh, let's hope we just saved $3,000.
No, we didn't. The number is correct, the entry, there's just actually two detail items.
Paul, what was the,
Move either one, that should be fine.
what was the request under the Act, Sanford, Acton, Shapley dams for
Well, it's
last year?
6383 is what was requested.
It was not.
Last line.
It was nothing last year, if I can give you some
Oh,
background.
last year, no.
Last year,
Here's the numbers last year,
Larissa and
the
Bill
detail.
met with the committee, and, I don't know his first name, is Mr. Green, that's the town manager.
Mark.
Mark Green, and Shapley, and Larissa and Bill, they had several meetings on Friday morning, so I wasn't able to attend. And they wanted Acton to take on 1/3 of the cost of all maintenance and repairs of the dam. And Larissa and Bill said, you know, you've got a bigger tax base, you have more residents, why isn't it 50%, 25% for Shapley, 25% for Acton? And he refused. He wouldn't even consider that. He wouldn't consider that we have a lower amount of people, we don't have all the industry with all the tax base that they have there. It's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And they use it to run their
Water treatment.
water treatment plant.
Treatment plant, yeah.
So now, as you guys heard, when they came to us, suddenly now their group is willing to do 50%, 25%, 25%. And then figured they'd put themselves in as a charity so that they could get this before the people, because we didn't put the question before the people last year. Instead, we asked the people for $5,000 to put aside. We're asking for $5,000 again this year to put aside. And what we'll do is the new board that starts after town meeting, we'll go and talk to them. And if they are willing to do that, 50%, 25%, 25%, then we'll bring it before the town next year. But to sneak it in, and this is 1/3, the 6383 is 1/3, that's not 25%.
That's what I thought.
So they're trying to sneak it in before the town as a charity and get the full 1/3 after we told them, no, we wouldn't do that. And then saying that, oh, but, you know, we will be willing to do that starting next year. So all three selectmen have already agreed, we're going to lower that article on the floor by $6,383. So, you know, it's up to you guys what you want to do, but that's what we're doing.
So in other words, we really could just scratch that off.
Well,
We can't,
No, we can't.
we can't. It's on, they came in.
it could be amended on town floor.
Well, I think that it is in good faith on the selectmen's part that when these organizations come in, that it at least goes before the people, that it makes it on the warrant and the people decide.
And then we'll tell them why we think you should or you shouldn't, and then the town makes the actual decision. Because
Yes.
this dam, I mean, there were some residents from Acton that were involved in this committee that will get up and have something to say about this. And, I'm assuming that, you know, they were involved in getting that article put on the floor anyways. So we're not gonna take it off the floor, but we do not think that, we should be giving that money. We're putting another 5,000 away anyway, so we've got 5,000 last year and another 5,000 put this way, this year.
Well, the question I brought up when we looked at it before was, you know, why should Acton get involved when Sanford won't even tell you, has the dam been inspected? Is it going to require a big chunk of money?
Isn't there a new town manager down in Sanford now?
There
Haven't
will
changed
be,
yet.
yeah.
He, Mr. Green's still there, it hasn't changed yet.
And we are putting forth $5,000 a year. And
Maybe
we'll see
about the
that.
end of the fiscal year he's leaving? Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, 'cause there was
I did
some-
see he was leaving, but he hasn't left yet.
Because there was something about, I think Bill had said something about that, and then that there was gonna be a new committee down there to be able to talk to. I don't-
Yeah.
So the two big increases then in this article would be the Acton Food Pantry and then the dam's request.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the pantry, excuse me, these dams, I have a proposal. I don't necessarily think I'm wedded to this enough to make it on town floor, but I present it here just as a, gee, that sounds interesting. My computation, and basically I threw away the capital plan, the $5,000, okay, and here I'm quoting from what they requested here, it's not online, I'm sorry about that. But they were asking for 1/3 of all the costs, and all of the costs were based on two numbers. One is the total operating cost of $14,150, and the other one was a capital plan of $5,000 for future repairs, et cetera. Now, I threw out the $5,000 because we're already putting forward $5,000 for the last couple of years. Actually, last year was the first time. This year will be the second time for future expenses for the dam. So we're not totally, you know, blowing off the dams here, just involvement in this particular committee. So I threw that away because we're already dealing with that in another way. I took the $14,150 and I went back to the argument about the tax base. So I found online where the tax base for Sanford is about $1.5 billion. Okay? The tax base of Acton is about $500 million. I'm assuming the tax base of Shapley is roughly equivalent, $500 million. So what I have is that Sanford has 3 shares and Shapley and Acton each have 1 share. Okay, in the total piece of the pie. So 5 shares. So Acton should pay 1/5 if we wanted to be diligent and good faith and all that, 1/5 of the total amount of the total operating budget, which computes to $2,830. So I came up with a number of $2,830 if we want to say, okay, I want to have good faith, I want to show you that I want to participate, but I don't like the way you're offering that we participate. And also to acknowledge here that this doesn't buy us anything. We're not on the committee, we have no say in anything for this $2,830. It doesn't preclude what might happen next year, if and when we are on the committee, through a whole separate discussion, but just to say, here's more than 0, but less than what you wanted, here's our reasoning for it. Anyway, so it's not going to change. I don't necessarily think I'm going to recommend that we say that we throw $2,830 in there instead, but for discussion.
You're increasing what they're asking for.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
They're asking for...
The 5,000 that we're putting...
They're asking, no, well, we were already putting the 5,000. I did not include their capital plan. I'm saying, okay, we already are dealing with the capital plan on our own.
Well, the other thing
Right?
that,
But I just took the total operating cost, 1/5 of the total operating cost.
If we go with what you're saying, we could give them the $6,383 close out our 5,000, and we're gonna save, you know.
Well, yeah, but we're not really,
They're asking us to pay more than they're asking.
we're not really part of the, well,
We're not part of them, so we shouldn't be giving them anything, and
Well-
so we negotiate.
Well, the other,
that's just what I came up with off the, back of the envelope kind of a thing.
the other thing you're not taking into account is Sanford has to maintain those dams, or they can't maintain their sewage treatment
Well,
plant.
that's fine, but I mean, we do get value for that. We would have a
We do,
single mud
but-
flat,
but
in
Sanford
Mousom
gets
if we didn't.
far
have to pay.
more value than we do.
Yeah, but I agree with Ted that it should be negotiated before we start,
Well, the bottom line is, I certainly don't agree
Decide
with
to
their
fund it,
6383 and how they came up with it. So have we talked about enough of this that we can move on tonight? And then maybe we can talk about it a little more is there any of the other items that you want to discuss? Anything so here's what we had last year and this year, and as already pointed out, the Acton Food Pantry is here this year. It was not here in previous years. Some of the other ones in previous years, a little lower, a little higher,
there are some
but
new
that's the big one.
There are some new ones. Well, Pagelia was new last year.
Last year, right.
Horn Pond?
Well, Horn Pond, my understanding, I saw some handwriting in like $1,000, and I saw in the budget book $1,000 for Horn Pond, but my understanding is that the $2,000 that goes to GELIA, they're gonna forward $1,000 of that to Horn Pond. So it's incorporated in the 2,000 that GELIA is getting.
We got a separate request, 1,000 for Horn Pond, 2,000 for Pagelia.
So does that mean that this article is gonna change?
Huh?
Does that mean this article is gonna change, because it's not there now? Oh, excuse me, it is.
on this article,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
totally
then
lost
also,
that.
What's the other group?
Got it, thank you.
Biddeford Free Clinic, that's new, isn't it?
No, I don't think so.
No, we've done that a couple of years.
Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
It's amazing
Right there,
that
yeah.
How many Acton residents.
On the bottom of the list last year,
We're back to this year's.
this year.
Woodford's? No? Or they
Well,
were
Woodford's been there for a while.
Parent Awareness?
Oh, Acton Wakefield Watershed Alliance, I think, did they go down? No, they stayed the same.
No, they stayed the
And the
same.
reason they said they stayed the same was they were, instead of asking for more, they were adding Horn Pond.
5,000.
Supposedly, Horn Pond, the, Acton Wakefield Watershed and Gelia are all gonna work together on that, plant program that they work on. So that means we're paying 9,000 there, and then 22,000 to Acton Chapel
Right.
ICC.
Right.
So we're paying $30,000 a year for their plant programs on all the lakes.
And prevention is, an ounce of prevention is certainly worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely.
So it's money well spent.
Yep.
They do a pretty good job. And these, couple of, let's see, the guys that are ramping up here, I think the GELIA, yeah. No, they're 2,000. I guess we didn't do Horn Pond last year.
Huh?
I guess we didn't do Horn Pond last
No,
year,
Horn
right?
Pond we didn't do last year.
Okay. Is there any more about any of this stuff that we need to talk about
And they got
tonight?
them in twice.
That was a typo.
That was, the line is extra, but the total isn't. So I only found it because I added everything up to see if it proved, and I was $3,000 over.
I just noticed it just now.
So I didn't actually notice it, before then, but it's like, okay, where'd that $3,000
The
come from?
library's gone up, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. There's a couple of percent, let's see, if you want to talk about that
Library went up to
briefly.
2% raise,
Wow.
and then they asked for something else.
If the food pantry's counted twice, that
library.
means that should be down to 64.
No, that number is right. This was just entered twice.
Oh,
If you add these all up,
and it matches, if you leave out that
Yes.
3, right?
Okay, the library, the wages went up
twice in the
4.5%.
same day.
And they're also throwing in $275 for professional development.
No,
And,
that's not much money.
excuse me, no. Sorry, that's actually coming out.
grand.
No, what's going up is technology.
Yeah, to categorize the material.
Oh, Tricia told me
The other way, sorry.
46.
Let's try that again. So wages, 4.5% increase, and just a little bit of tweaking here and there.
You know what?
Signage, they went up, they're asking for 350. Technology went down from 500 to 100, and professional development, 275, and I believe that's travel to various symposiums that, other libraries, et cetera, and a subscription to Library World, 395. So the total difference there, I think I actually have a percentage here of how much
I
that
see
went
now
up.
about the salt shed is,
But anyway, the dollar amount,
this thing roof off.
where is the library?
With
Right
what
there,
Milton did.
18,291 this year,
They bought one of those.
and last year is 16,991.
And it's a,
Anyway, those
and,
proposed expenditures seem okay to me.
you
It went up
eliminate
2,300.
all that roof weight.
And I want to point out, since there was a doled out earlier, I might as well hit you with a Yahoo. There's a department number there.
1,500.
Good job. Okay, any further discussion on this one? We move on. I think we can race to the finish here. Dams.
Beat that one to death.
Well, last year, okay, I just want to point out, it's been some very interesting mileage on dams. So 2009, we were just talking about 500 for dams. 2010, we had 3 articles that addressed various dams for various reasons.
That's because there was some work done and then we were requested by Shapley or, Newfields to.
Yeah, so we're
cost
pond,
for it, so we had to add a little more for those.
And in 2011, same kind of thing, a couple of articles. And so this year, we're down to the 5,500 article, which there was one last year as well,
Right, we started it last year.
500.
Because we chose not to ask the town to go into that agreement with Shapley and Sanford, we decided to start our own dams capital improvement fund, which makes more sense anyways for us to have it in our accounts until it's needed instead of having it in the Sanford account.
So the $500 is Balch Lake Operator, which we've had year to year, and 5,000 for the capital account.
Right.
Okay, and all of that proves to what we talked about. Okay. Is there, no, okay. So I think that we should be calling this 2012, 2013, because we're saying the same thing that we were saying last year. Last year was correct. This is one of those ones that we kind of mess up from year to year. So 2009, 2010, this should have been 2010, 2011, 11, 12, that was good, and 12 and this should be 12 and 13. Moving on. Okay, selected balance is carried forward. This one, it is phrased a little differently. I summarized what the changes are down here, and I've got 1 or 2 questions about that. Other than that, I'm merely going to say, make sure this is what you want, because this is what we've got. We're adding in gravel processing, District 1 and 2 winter maintenance, District 1 and 2 summer maintenance, District 1 and 2 road surfacing, dams capital improvement fund, recreation department funds. What we're removing is District 1 winter and summer maintenance, District 2 winter and summer maintenance, Acton Rec capital improvement account. Now, in specific, I know that there's an article this year that is putting stuff into Acton Rec capital improvement account, which I believe already exists, and I'm questioning why we're removing that from this article. I fully admit that I may be missing something.
If you look down, the ones we removed are moved down below.
Well, it's called Recreation Department Funds. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
So in the article, when we put stuff into Acton Rec capital improvement, and here where we're rolling over Recreation Department funds, is that intended to be a broader envelope that includes the
Yes.
capital improvement account?
It's taking all the funds. It's not just taking their capital improvement funds, it's also taking whatever they have left over. As I said, they don't expect to be having too many teams this year, so they probably have money left over where they wouldn't before. they would have to go out and fundraise, so we're gonna carry that forward, just in case in the years to come, all of a sudden we get this huge amount of kids.
Okay, so we're actually carrying, for the rec department, we're actually carrying more forward with this phraseology than we would be if we left the old phraseology.
No,
Because there could be
there's
multiple
never anything
departments.
left before. But if you look, the difference is to carry forward but not appropriate, okay? And the difference is,
Right.
all those are down there is because right now, in the past years, all of those were carried forward and appropriate.
Yes.
So the recreation committee could come in and say, okay, we've decided we want to re-turf the whole baseball field, put up new fencing, and we would have to give them money to do it.
Right.
Now, we have to go back to the town, and the recreation committee has to put a warrant article on the floor and say, this is what we want to do, is it okay for us to do?
Sure, I mean, that's not really under discussion here, though. I mean, I understand you have two sections.
Right.
What I did is combine them in my comments are down here. I'm saying that we're removing this thing called, we're adding this thing called Recreation Department Funds, and we're removing this thing from whichever section called Acton Rec Capital Improvement Account. And in this article, in this year's warrant, we're putting funds into, or even having funds coming out of Acton Rec Capital Improvement Account.
Correct.
Coming out of, going back into, and here, we're not talking about an Acton Rec Capital Improvement Account.
Right, we're changing it to
We're
recreation
calling it
department
something
fund.
different.
Right, because we're gonna carry forward not just that improvement, but also any leftover money that they have.
Okay.
That the-
As long as there is a good and valid reason for you to be doing that, I don't have to understand it.
There's not gonna
I'll
be
confess to not doing so.
Okay, and this, same thing, capital improvement fund, you asked earlier about that, so that money we get from houses we sell, we do have to go back to the town to ask them to, can we use that for this job? Or can we use it to, do the siding or painting or something like that?
Thank you.
So we can ask for that next year. And then the dams capital improvement fund, of course, is we will save the $5,000 a year, but we will not send it on the dams, send it on the dams unless we ask the townspeople if it's okay.
I assume that there was some good and valid reason why several of the articles were in purple, other than a sense of extreme aesthetics. But there it is, I decided to retain the color scheme, just in case there was something valid about it, but perhaps not. I saw nothing really to say about this. This is another one of those cookie cutter articles that's, last couple of years, there were some numbers that were included here. Last year, we decided to go a little bit more general, because they're all estimates anyway. It's all, funny money. It's all highly estimated, and this is essentially the same as last year. So I'm good with that. There was no legal commentary last year. Okay, Article 37. Okay, so this one, the last few years, you can see that we've had school balances on the town meeting, and I assume that these school balance things were just simply removed because they were superfluous to what we're discussing at town meeting, and that they were probably handled in Article 16, 17, and 18 on April 10th when we actually had the school warrant. So what we have left is the town portion of that, which is essentially the same as it was the last few years. It's always $412,000 and unknown. And again, we're not beholden to any of those numbers, it's just what it is. And I think I need to include, oh, here it is. Here we go.
Has the state
Okay, so,
given
going down to
how much money they're gonna get?
I don't know.
Article 38. This is a new one. To see if the town of Acton will vote to enter into a property assessed clean energy program agreement, PACE, with the Efficiency Maine Trust and authorize the selectmen to sign the same. Backstory on that, please?
It's a state program that you can borrow money, long-term, low interest. I think the example I gave was a $12,000 loan is $50 a month for 15 years. to replace windows, insulate.
This is the homeowner, correct?
Right, the homeowner borrows the money comes from the state, the town has nothing to do with it, but we have to agree with the state that it's okay for them to offer this in Acton. We've had a lot of residents that have read about it and have come in and asked about it, but the only way we can become part of the program is if the town votes on the floor, what we can't sign the agreement without permission of the town.
Is there any perceived downside to this that you've seen so far?
Well, no, we're just saying it's okay for them to get involved in the state program. The state didn't want to come in and push this in our town without asking us. Once that's done, the town has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's between the individual homeowner and the state and whoever's dispersing the money.
Okay, thank you. It would probably be good for us to look on the web and find out a little something about this before we vote on it, but, I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer.
Sounds like.
But wait, that's not all. We also have,
They have one.
the last item here is an article that we had last year, but I think we need to have this year, unless you can tell me that we shouldn't. This is a thing that goes hand in hand with Article 15 on the backside to be paid by the town on abated taxes. And the reason for it is in this legal agreement here, and basically it's to the town's benefit if we have to, if we're in one of those situations that we can actually pay less for those funds, as opposed to paying 7% to people for abated taxes, we can get and only do 3%, yes.
Let me find out if it's not necessary for us to do it every year. If it is, then we definitely will.
Well, it wasn't an ordinance, so unless it just doesn't happen this year,
It was an ordinance?
it was not an ordinance, so it's going out, with the bathwater, I would think. And that's all she wrote about that. So the total warrant is actually, as written right now, is 0.5% higher than last year. Originally, it was slightly less, and in fact, it will be less if in fact Article 6 and 7 don't fly. It will be less than last year's budget, but for now, the way it's written, 0.5% higher. Okay, folks, I would like to nail down, I don't think we necessarily need a workshop except for the purpose of maybe reviewing the next warrant that comes down the pike. It's going to be substantially changed, although certainly reminiscent of what we're seeing this year. I plan to have it set up the same way, so we can compare, it should be going bing, 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 but rather than tie up a secretary and an official meeting with that, I think it would be good to get the next warrant as soon as possible, go over it like we went over it tonight, then we'll be in good shape to have a meeting and just make recommendations.
Absolutely.
Sound like it makes sense?
Yes.
So when are we going to do that? Now, first of all, Ted, what do you think is reasonable for getting the next iteration of this warrant?
I'll try to have it to you tomorrow, but I guarantee you'll have it by Wednesday.
Okay, so,
Remember, we're down a staff member.
yep, yeah, I
We
just
have an extra one in on
want to make
Wednesday,
sure we
so
can
if can't get it done tomorrow,
fit in here.
I'll make sure you have it Wednesday, by midday Wednesday.
Yeah, because you're going to have the final form of it for your recommendations on Thursday.
Right.
Okay.
No, we're doing the 17th. We're not doing it this week.
You are, from what I got on the schedule, you're making your recommendations on the 10th, and you're signing it on the 17th.
You're right.
This is my calendar. Okay, so you need this just as much as we do by Thursday night, this being Tuesday. Okay, so I guess, so I can't really guarantee, certainly tomorrow would be too early for me to put it on the computer anyway. You're going to have your own drop dead date for Thursday, so I'm comfortable saying, yeah, we'll have it Thursday. Do you guys can we meet on Friday, or is that just ridiculous and go to next week? Because next week we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Monday is candidates night. I'd kind of like to not step on that, but you got to do what you got to do. And then we have Tuesday and Wednesday that don't seem to have town activities going on. One of those 3 nights, we have to have the official meeting. So that's probably gonna be Wednesday. I'd love to have the workshops squared away this week if we can, although if it doesn't sound reasonable to the group, we'll push it to next week. I'd kinda like to be breathing a little easier by the weekend, but it is what it is.
I can't.
What are your
I can't.
thoughts?
Friday night, I can't.
Okay, so Friday night is
You
out
guys
for you.
can still meet, but I can't Friday night.
I'm tight for Friday too, I can't.
Why not Wednesday? If you could do it this Wednesday, I'll make sure it's...
Well, no, well, this Wednesday, it took me all weekend I won't even get into what I went through this weekend to get the warrant from Friday on the computer for today, so, but I don't, the bottom line is I won't have enough time to put it on there.
Yeah, but if we send it to everybody by email, they'll all have it, you don't have to put it up there. You can't see that on TV anyways.
You can't see that on TV?
No, you didn't know that?
Really? No.
You can't see the PowerPoint screen.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the point? What's the freaking point? Okay,
I could do Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday I can do.
so we would be meeting at the same time that well, I'd kind of like to be seeing the recommendations of, while they're happening and the discussions for the selectmen, so, I mean, it is part of the presentation of the current warrant, so, I don't feel comfortable having something in competition.
How much is the new version of the warrant gonna change from what we saw
Not gonna
tonight?
change any of the numbers, all it's gonna change...
There'll be 2 new
is
articles,
Legal way...
3 new articles.
The lawyer had the actual wording. Won't change any, what we're doing in each article, it just makes sure that we're asking in a legal way.
Yep.
But none of the finances are gonna change, none of the numbers.
So our workshop is going to be rather brief. In a perfect world.
Conceivably, yes. I mean, if you wanted to actually make it part of the meeting, that we would go over it and then immediately take a vote on it, we could do that. I mean,
Why can't
we can.
So if you
I
do
mean,
that Thursday at
as-
6 and then we vote on it at 7, it's all done.
As long as the next warrant we get, or the warrant we have for our meeting at least, has no obvious contention, like we had tonight, I'm good with that, because then we can hit each item, say, any discussion, if there is or isn't, and we move on. Because obviously, by that time, you will have already made your recommendation, so we're not going to be in the nickel stage anymore. We'll be in at least the 50-cent stage, so I'm not going to really be expecting any changes. So that sounds reasonable. So the next time we meet, we're going to have the combined task of verifying that the warrant we have, which will be only the second time we're talking about them, is good, and I will, if we can cooperate with emails to try to make sure that happens, then we will be officially presented with a warrant that looks pretty good, and we won't have a whole lot to talk about, and we'll just do one of these. If there's any recommendations, according to what you were talking about earlier, of
We can go
numbers,
through it
do
just
that.
like we did tonight, article by article. I don't see that I don't see anything that I would say I didn't.
Debated,
Yeah, I don't see a lot of extra discussion that would occur on top of what we would have at the meeting.
I'm ready to recommend and...
Okay, so let's do that. We have one more meeting.
Right.
Okay? No more workshops, a meeting.
Thursday.
When will we have that meeting? And it's not going to be this Thursday, and it's not going to be next Thursday, because that's going to be on top of the
A week from
selectmen's,
today, Monday night.
on top of candidates'
It's
night.
candidates night.
Let's do Tuesday night.
Candidates night's at 7, you could come in at 6.
Why can't we do it Thursday? Why can't we do it coming Thursday?
I don't want to have that sitting over our heads. Thursday is Board of Selectmen recommendation and the Board of Selectmen signing the warrant. And so the second one is going to be too late, and the first one, I want to be able to participate in the recommendations.
How long will your selectmen's meeting go next Thursday?
Oh, no.
Next Thursday?
This one coming?
Oh, this one coming? We don't have a lot, we're just gonna vote on the articles, and we wrote the budget, so we already know what we're gonna vote. So we're gonna vote Thursday night.
But it's still on top of another meeting. There's going to be, gee, if it's
No.
over,
If we start our meeting at 8 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock, the selectmen will be all done.
if we say that we will start it when they finish it,
Yeah,
at least we'll get a jump on it if they finish early. I'm comfortable with that, then we don't
Our
have
meeting's been
conflict.
going 15,
That
20
means,
Right.
the TV's all gonna be set up for the selectmen's meeting, so the minute they walk out, we can start our meeting.
Okay.
Does that meeting have to be posted?
Well, it could be.
I will not be here.
Well, actually, that's a very interesting point. I don't know how early a meeting, because that's never come up before, how early a Warrant and Finance meeting must be scheduled. Right now, it is not scheduled, and we're only talking a couple of days from now.
I don't think that there's any kind of rules. It's the selectmen's meeting.
Well,
Something
yeah,
is
but this would be a Warrant and
decided.
Finance
We are
meeting.
still a advisory committee. We aren't making any
Okay, and we would be, and we would be piggybacking on a meeting that was scheduled.
Why don't we
and
just make it for Tuesday of next week? Then
We
you got-
could.
Then you got all kinds of time.
We can.
Works for me.
Okay, so we can't do Friday. Okay, so candidate guys know, okay, so we're going Tuesday, and we have a drop-dead date of Wednesday if the world freezes or boils or something.
You want the secretary, you want your secretary here Tuesday night?
Yes, Tuesday night, the
6 o'clock.
15th of May, for the whole enchilada. All right, thank you all. This was a interesting little workshop, and we are done.